Hey there, everybody. Happy Tuesday back to you. Welcome back to another episode of Shop Talk Tuesday Live. Um, Tell me where you guys are hanging out from. All right. So Jennifer, how you doing? Robert, what's up? Rusty, what's going on, man? Aaron, Layla, hi there. How are you guys doing? And Kula from Cyprus, how are you? HD Custom Design, all the way from Oregon. What's going on, guys and gals? Tim from West Virginia. What's going on, Tim Weiss? All right, guys, so we have a pretty cool Shop Talk Tuesday this evening. Wanted to go over a few things with you guys. A few things that I learned this week, plus also some questions that have come up in the past for epoxy. But I'm going to get to some of these comments real quick first. Lost Sailor says, Nathan, my man, can a melamine mold be reused? I'm only pouring a void in the wood to make it see-through. Resin will only touch the base of the mold, not the sides. All right, yeah, Lost Sailor, for sure you can reuse the mold. As long as the mold that you reuse is clean and you have some sort of mold release, whether that be packing tape or automotive wax or furniture wax or whatever it is, as long as you have a mold release, you're good to go to reuse the molds. I've reused a bunch of them as myself. Nicholas Young says, good evening, my friend. Nick, how's the crusty finger coming? No problem, Lost Sailor. So guys, I was chatting with another subscriber the other day on Facebook, and I noticed that on his small batches, I think he was making really small pin blanks or something like that. Excuse me. He was making some small pin blanks from Stone Coat Countertops epoxy, and I noticed that he was using a scale to measure and mix epoxy. Now, the Stone Coat Countertop stuff that he was using, they say to measure by volume and not by weight. However, he said he called them and that they said it was okay to mix small batches by weight on a scale. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys. If you guys have any want to use small batches of this Stone Coat Countertop stuff instead of big stuff, I would try that out and see how it works for you. Jordan Woodworks, how you doing? Thanks for chiming in. Jeremy P. still in Indiana, and Rusty says I'm working too. Switch me to afternoons. Oh man, that's terrible. So you working second shift? Well, be careful whatever you're doing. We don't want you to get messed up at work watching this video. So we have a few things coming up in the GoodView Woodworks behind the scenes. I have some new epoxy. I may have spoken about this before, but I had a company reach out to me and send me some casting epoxy that I'm going to be trying out here very, very soon. I've got to set some time aside to test this stuff out. And I'm really excited because they said you can pour it up to 6 inches thick, do not have to seal the edges, and you won't get any bubbles. So I don't know about that. I'm excited to see if it works. Peter Thompson says, good morning from Sydney, Australia. Hey Peter, good morning. What time is it over there? Rusty, okay, I see you taking your lunch. That's good. Aaron says, what does it say? Feet are kicked up on a desk. So you're just chilling. A Lost Sailor says, I'm thinking of getting some stone coat. What do I use for thick pours? Maybe 1/2 inch. So if you're only going a 1/2 inch, which I would consider not super thick, you can use their casting epoxy. And they also have a super cast, which is made for at least 1 inch thick up to 3 inches thick. So you can check that stuff out as well. As a matter of fact, in the video that I posted this afternoon, I linked up some of Stone Coat Countertop's top coat, which is their countertop epoxy, and you can pour that only an 1/8 inch thick. So you can use all their stuff, but the countertop epoxy can only be poured an 1/8 inch, and their casting epoxy is 1 inch up to 1 inch in one pour. So you have to be careful. The biggest thing to watch out for when pouring epoxy is that it's if you pour it too thick, it could overheat and crack and mess up your stuff. So Lost Sailor asks, is that food safe? And yes, I just spoke with Mike in Oregon about that recently, and yeah, Stone Coat Countertops epoxy is food safe. Aaron Hungate says, with thicker pours, what is the issue with doing multiple shallow pours for just one thick one? Aaron, there's no problem at all with doing multiple thick pours. I would say the only issue that I think of is time, because it takes a lot of time to pour multiple pours and let it get tacky before you pour the next one. It just takes more time. The only advantage of pouring one thick one is that you can pour it all at one time. LaCroix in the house. But great questions, guys. I really appreciate them. Any questions you have, doesn't matter what they are. There's no dumb questions. Only dumb people won't ask them, right? Well, Roxy just went crazy. Somebody's coming up to the house, I guess. So, Aaron Delfrat says, I know you have covered this previously, but I want to make cornhole boards. Time spent in the sun, will it affect epoxy? Yes. Almost all epoxies will amber over time. Sorry, Roxy's being crazy. But yeah, sunlight causes epoxy to amber. And so it'll turn yellow on you. But you won't really notice too much as long as the background is not white. It just shows up the most on white. So great question, thank you. Jennifer says, saw your video with Mike Stonecoat, so good, very jealous. Yeah, it worked out really cool. So what happened was I was in California for work, and we got off a couple days early. We finished the project a couple days early. I could not get a flight back, and so I called Mike to see what he was up to, and I kind of invited myself, but he was cool with it, and we came down and did a video together. It worked out really, really cool. So, hey, I appreciate that, Jennifer. Rusty Merkin says, does Mike at Stonecoat give any discount for good viewers? He may, I don't know. You should totally ask. I bet you he would. If you called up there and asked and said that, Nathan from GoodView Woodworks recommended you, you might be able to get something. Who knows? That's a good question. Aaron Huntgate says, always wondered if a thick pour is worth it, being that they are 3 times the cost. Well, I would say with Stone Coat Countertops epoxy that it's not 3 times the cost. It actually, so for a gallon of the regular countertop epoxy, which you can only pour 1/8 inch at a time, it's $95, and then for the supercast it's $150. So It's about 50% more expensive. Zombie Redeem says, put the folks at your door on the video. No, I don't think that they want to be on the video. They may, but I doubt it. Rusty Merkin says, use spar urethane for outdoors. Aaron says, crazy colors, can't wait to do it. Yeah. What kind of colors do you plan on using? Kula says, lucky Mike for having Nathan to his workshop. Oh, that was very nice of you. Thank you for that. Rusty Merkin says, you don't ask, you don't get. I'll ask him. Yeah, for sure. I say ask him. He's a pretty cool guy, so I would ask. Sean Felton says, what was your first project with resin, and did it work out the way you planned? That's a good question. Aaron, do you remember what my first epoxy project was? Well,
what was it?
I don't know. It's such a long time ago. See, I have been using resin for a long time. I would say, okay, I remember what it is. The first time I used epoxy resin was when I'm 31 now. So when I was 19 or 20, I made a skim board, half carbon fiber and half Kevlar, and I used epoxy resin to make the skim board. That was pretty cool. Great question, Sean. Tim Wise says, speaking of cornhole boards, would epoxy stand up to playing for the long run? Yeah, totally. So Stone Coat Countertops epoxy, their countertop epoxy is scratch resistant and heat resistant. So it's kind of made to get banged up a little bit here and there. Plus, if you were to get it scuffed up or whatever, you can always sand it and buff it out and it'll come back. Jennifer says, I'm still trying to work out my tortoise shell epoxy project. You mentioned an auto paint before, but I don't recall exactly what you mentioned. Do you recall? Yes. It's not a paint, it's a paint additive, and it's called root beer candy. So you have different color candies that are added to automotive paint. That I'm sure you could probably add it to the epoxy. But look for a root beer candy, and you might be able to find it. Great question. Hey, Aaron says, when done, we'll send pics. Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate that. I would love to see it. Nicholas says, have you ever pre-coated with shellac before pouring? No, I have not. However, my father-in-law did use it's called seal coat, and I'm not sure exactly what it's made out of, but it's some sort of shellac type product. And what happened was the epoxy did not cure when it was touching the shellac, and I'm not sure why that happened, but it was dry on top, but underneath it was still liquid. It didn't let it cure for some reason. So I would be careful with using anything besides epoxy to seal or anything like that, just so that you don't mess up your project, you know. Lost Sailor says, do you have to sand resin to a super fine grit if you are covering with polyurethane or cutting board oil? So no, I would say the highest that you should go is 300 grit. You don't have to go super high with it, especially if you're putting another finish on top. Rusty Murphy says, I use sanding sealer on my stain pieces before I epoxy them and it works out fine. Yeah, great idea. So I also use sanding sealer every once in a while to seal the edges. I've done that before when I didn't have enough epoxy or I was afraid I was going to run out. So you can always, I use the Minwax sanding sealer and I've not had a problem. I don't remember the brand of this seal coat or sanding sealer. It was something that my father-in-law used and it messed the epoxy up. So I'll see if I can't get some of that and show you guys at a later point. Matt Anderson says, what's the best paint primer base? What is the best to use, water base or... So Matt Anderson, what kind of project are you talking about? for like a countertop project or for like a woodworking? Like, what do you mean? Sean says, do you have a favorite timber to use for river tables? I really, black walnut is my favorite species of wood, and I've used a lot of maple as well. But black walnut to me is the coolest. Nick Sheldon says Minwax sanding sealer is the bomb. And Rusty Murray says that's what I use is the Minwax. Yeah, it's easy. You can find it right up there at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever's close to you. Matt Anderson, getting back to what you asked, he said countertop. So he said, what's the best paint and primer? So I got this from Mike over at Stone Coat Countertops. He uses the Bear from Home Depot, paint and primer in one. And I've used that and have had success with that. So that's what I would recommend. Jeremy says, what are the grits in order that should be used when sanding an epoxy product? Okay, so great question. If you are just pouring a river table or you're layering with an epoxy as your top coat, all you have to do is you sand. I would start sanding with 80 grit, then 100, and then 220. But 220 is all you need as a final coat. Hopefully that helps. Great question, Jeremy. Rusty says, fell in love with a piece of sycamore last week. Yeah, sycamore is really pretty. Sometimes it can be kind of plain, but when you do have some figure and stuff in there, it looks awesome. Brent House says, I'm making coffee and end tables this weekend from spruce. What do you recommend to finish it after stain? It all depends on what you're looking for. If you want a really hard finish, then I would recommend, you could always epoxy it, but I would recommend a polyurethane. Polyurethane, in my opinion, is best. Especially, so my actual thing that I don't really like a high gloss table for myself. I like more of a satin finish. So like a satin polyurethane is what I prefer. No problem, Matt. No problem, Jeremy. Aaron Delfret says pecan. Peecan.
Pecan.
My wife says it's pecan. The Didge Dude says, what's your favorite mold release? Well, I have a couple that I've used in the past. I've used automotive paste wax. That works really good. And then my go-to is packing tape because it's cheap and readily available. Rusty Merkin says Minwax makes a wipe-on poly that's awesome too. Yeah, I've used it and I like the Minwax wipe-on poly satin, one of my favorites. John Fuller says, do you have to be careful when putting hot drinks on epoxy? So great question. The Stone Coat countertop epoxy is heat resistant and it can handle a hot pan right off the stove onto the epoxy. So it all depends on what brand you get, but the Stone Coat countertop stuff works really well. So, no, you do not have to be careful when putting hot drinks on epoxy. I think most epoxies are good up to like 250 degrees. So you don't have to worry about that, but it does, if you do heat it up, sometimes it can get soft. So it just all depends on the brand that you get. Great question, John Fuller, appreciate that. Jennifer says, watch some Stone Coat videos. They lit it on fire. That's right. I remember when they lit it on fire. Lost Sailor says, don't let your wife pecan you for how you pronounce pecan. That's right. So my wife says pecan, and my dad, I told him pecan, and he said, isn't that what they give you at the hospital? No, I was like, no, that's called a bedpan. Sean Felton says, have you ever made something for a customer that turned out so good you made a replica for yourself? Yes, and well, no, I've never made something a replica for myself. However, I really want to. So there's a few things that I've made that now I want to make for myself, and one of them being a desk for my computer. And the crazy thing is, what I'm gonna have to do is probably put up something really quickly as my desk temporarily until I can save up and get some materials and some epoxy to make my computer desk, because I want my computer desk to look legit. Squid Bro, hello. What's going on, Squid Bro? Guys, I really appreciate you guys interacting with me this evening. I tell you, one of the things that I wanted to talk about was having some people on here, excuse me, when I come on Tuesday nights, I have a blast, but you know, I have a very small following when it comes to Shop Talk Tuesday Live, and I asked some people whether I should continue doing this on Tuesday, and she was pretty much like without a doubt yes. And so I always appreciate the encouragement. Sometimes I get discouraged a little bit, and my time is limited, so I try to be out in the shop as much as possible. But I will say I really do have a blast talking to you guys, and they reassure me of that. So I will not stop. I'm glad you guys appreciate it too. So Matt Anderson says, do not stop, please. Okay. You guys convinced me, and I want to thank you for encouraging me, and thank you for supporting this channel. It means a lot. Matt Anderson says, thank you all for adopting. There are a lot of children that need good families. This world needs more families like yours. Hey Matt, I really appreciate that. Yeah, we are really excited. We've had a few messages here and there. Nothing too crazy with the update, but we will be letting you guys know shortly as soon as we know. So George Pena says, can you send us a link to a good web page to buy live edge slabs? I always find very expensive slabs online. Says, which page do you recommend? Thanks for your videos. George, so there's a guy, I posted a video on how to find live edge slabs a few videos back. If you go check that one out, I linked a guy in the description who has some live edge slabs for relatively inexpensively. So check him out. They have some pretty cool stuff, and it's where I bought my last slab. Ken Grant says, your pro tip vids are great, mate. Hey, Ken, I appreciate that, man. That's my goal here, is trying to help you guys with all your project as best as I can. HT Custom Design says, happy wife, happy life, y'all. That's right. Jennifer says, I personally really enjoy Shop Talks too. Well, thanks, man. Jennifer, sorry, I didn't mean to say man. I'm glad you guys like it. Sometimes I'm not so sure, but I appreciate your encouragement. Nick says, keep on keeping on, bruh. Life's a garden, dig it. That's right. Sounds like Joe Dirt to me. Rusty says, I've learned a lot from you and wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without your instruction. Hey man, that's really cool. I'm glad I could help you guys out. Los Harris has been looking forward to your chat and coming up with questions all week. Thanks, brother. Well, hey, man, that means a lot to me. Thank you for doing that. Sean says, the hard question, have you used anything in a project that your wife has gone looking for later? Yes. Yes, I have. I snagged her dustpan and small broom the other day and left it out there, and one of her good squirt bottles that she uses for ironing. She wasn't very happy. John Fuller says, hope you don't stop as this is my first time watching and I'm from Australia, so it helps me gain knowledge. All right, John, I totally, you guys have really encouraged me, so I really appreciate it. All right, guys, sorry about that. I had a weird comment just pop up, so had to get rid of that thing. So sorry about that. If you guys see some stuff, inappropriate stuff, I want this channel to be appropriate for all ages. So if you guys see any weird comments that pop up, don't hesitate to report it or remove it if you can. So Squid Bro says, where's your father-in-law's coffee shop? That's a great question. So it is in Detroit, in a little town called Corktown. If you look it up, you can find it over there. What I can do is, hey honey, do you know what's the exact name of your dad's coffee shop?
Cotton Grounds.
Yeah, okay, so I just want to make sure. It's called Common Grounds, and you can look that up on Google if you need to. Common Grounds Coffee Shop in Corktown. Aaron Hungate says, dude, my wife yells at me about dustpan stuff. Nice. Yeah, I steal some of her stuff all the time, so it's okay, I guess, right?
Yeah. I got a cuter dustpan.
My wife said, yeah, it's okay because she got a cuter dustpan. HT Custom Size says, how much epoxy do I need? Oh, how much do I epoxy I need video was great. Thank you for that. Hey, man, no problem. No problem at all. Nick Shelton says, you have no idea how encouraging it is that you post these videos. Guys, that's awesome. Got another dumb comment. Let me go ahead and hide the user on this channel. So this user's message will be hidden. Okay, we'll get rid of that one. So Bird Boy, I appreciate if you would not post any of these comments and stuff. So you're gone. Bye, Felicia. Rusty Murray says, have you ever used two different brand epoxies on the same project? No, I have not. So yeah, I get nervous when I when I think about trying to mix different stuff. So I have not, but that's a great question. Hey Matt, I appreciate you backing me up with that Burb Boy, whatever. Now, Lost Sailor says, I just watched your video on estimating amount of resin needed. There are 128 ounces in a gallon, so multiply 128 to get ounces. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, anytime you guys see something that I left out, don't hesitate to comment and post it up there. I appreciate it. Aaron says it's their fault they married us. That's a good one. Matthew Quinlan says, I just did my first pour for a river table and I think I might have poured too deep as the epoxy started smoking. It cured really quickly and I'm hoping I didn't mess up my project too much. Yeah, Matthew, so what happens is it does overheat. If you see that, you can always put some fans on it and direct the fan down to the top and it'll remove some of that heat. The problem is sometimes it will smoke and still cure without cracking, but the problem is when it gets too hot, it could put a big crack right down the middle of the epoxy. So you got to watch out for that. Always check manufacturer specs to see how much you can pour. Sometimes it's hard to find, but if you do a little bit of research, you can always find, at least from my experience, if you do some digging, you can find how deep to pour. So yeah, I hope you didn't mess it up too, man. Rusty says, I want to see what happens. He means when you mix two different brands together. I'll try it. I have a couple of, I have two different brands of epoxy. I'll try it and see. Aaron Hungate says, I agree with others. Your videos are very helpful and I watch them often. But if you stop, I get it. Well, I don't want to stop making videos. The only thing that I was curious was about the Shop Talk Tuesdays. But you guys, I'm glad you guys appreciate it. So I'll continue to do those. Thank you for replying and making me feel so good. Aaron Delfrat says, Merkin, I did not turn out bad at all. So Aaron has used 2 different brands together, and he says didn't turn out bad at all. So appreciate that, Aaron. Ty says, I overheat resin in a metal mold. Really cool effect. Volcanic eruption inside. Ty, if you have a picture of that, it'd be awesome. If you could send it either to Instagram or Facebook at GoodView Woodworks. I would love to see that picture. Sean Felton says, do you use a particular epoxy when considering the finish you're going for? Well, if you guys have been on this channel at all, I really prefer Stone Coat Countertops epoxy because of all the benefits that are in that epoxy. You have scratch resistance, heat resistant, and UV resistance. So I like to use that, and you can always sand and buff to whatever finish you like, whether that be satin, semi-gloss, or gloss. Kula says, mine was smoking as well, but ended up without messing it up. Thank God. That's right. Thank the Lord for watching out for your epoxy project. That's cool. I'm glad it worked out for you, Kula. Jordan Woodwork says, gotta go. Enjoy your evening. All right, Jordan. Thanks for hanging out with us, man. Appreciate it. Aaron says, being an electrician, thoughts on fracture burning? Hey, Aaron Hungate, ask if you see Rusty Merkin up here in the comments. He does that a lot. You should ask him. He does that stuff all the time, and he's a lot more experienced than I am with that. Matt Anderson said, oh, excuse me. Matt Anderson says, I cracked and ruined 1.5 gallons on a poor, expensive mistake. Oh, Matt, sorry to hear that, man. You know, I wonder if you could use a Dremel or a drill, depending on how deep the crack is. If you could Dremel it out and pour it in there and see if it would take it out. Who knows? Lost Sailor says, I did a small pour today. It's hot here, so it set quick. When I used a toothpick to make a swirl pattern, it puckered up. I used a heat gun to heat up and it resettled. Yeah, great tip. You can always, if it does pucker up, it's not fully cured, you can always use a heat gun to make it settle back down. Jeremy P says, have you considered getting an Alaskan mill for yourself? I have considered that. My problem is, though, I don't have a lot of space to store slabs inside. So maybe one day when I get a bigger shop. So Rusty Merkin says, be careful on those hot days. I'm sanding a mistake. Hey, Rusty, what happened, man? James Reyes says, I wanted to comment on that mixing epoxies. I had to mix 2 epoxies to do a finish coat on a concrete and walnut coffee table, and you couldn't even tell the difference. Hey, James, I appreciate that, man. Really like the insight, so I won't be so afraid next time if I run out. Sean Felton says, I'm heading out to buy timber. Thanks for answering my questions. Hey, no problem, Sean. You have a good day. Go get some good pieces of wood. Rusty Merkin says, at Aaron on Insta, I have a video in there. All right, Rusty. Nick says, I think the government should offer us all a grant for a wood warehouse. Right? I know, why not? Aaron says, thanks fellas, off to the pool with the kids. Well guys, I really thank you for hanging out with me this evening. Like I said, Tuesdays are always a blast when I get to interact with you guys and start building this community. Thank you for all the questions. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being cool. And I just wanted to say thanks for supporting this channel. It really means a lot. But you guys have a fun evening, and I will talk to y'all later. Thanks for hanging out with us.